first and foremost in any radio system is coverage. You have to know as a user, if you're going to be in a field somewhere on the southeast side of this county, or in the center of the town, or wherever you may be, you will hear dispatch, and dispatch will hear you. Other firefighters, other law enforcement officials, other EMTs can hear you, you can hear them. Our saying, kind of a colloquialism in our company, is coverage is king. There's no more important aspect of this than being heard from both directions. But that, of course, plays into item number 2, which is reliability and performance issues. We noted that there have been times where there have been long-term outages where the system has gone off air completely, or where there have been audio quality issues that had to have maintenance and things performed on it, and there were long-term, and when I say long-term, I'm talking about more than a couple of hours, because a public safety and 911 call can come in at any time. So if we're even talking about 3-4 hours, we start to consider that long-term outage or issues, because as you know, this is a 24-hour situation. And then, of course, the final piece of this is interoperability, and what that specifically means is not only operability is communicating within the county, interoperability is communicating outside the county. That's the highway patrol. That's when you have other firefighting agencies that come and support you when you have large grass fires or things like that. And conversely, when your staff is going to their counties to help them out when they have their large grass fires, structure fires, things like that. So interoperability is the third, and I would say that's probably in our order of what our opinion is of importance, but we're talking 1A, 1B, and 1C. It's not that significant of a difference between the three. Interoperability is just as important for people to come in and help you and you to go help people. I'm sure being neighborly, just not only amongst yourselves, but your counties as well, is very important for commissioners, as it would be for the users of the system. Continuing on, the projector maybe doesn't show it as well, but this is drive testing. This is actually, as I said, what Mr. Pruitt and I did. We drove throughout I did some of it by myself. Mr. Pruitt joined me for a large portion of it as well. I just drove through the county, and we have this test equipment that has been configured and aligned to make sure it is in tune for every time that we use this. We go back and check it to make sure it's not out of alignment or anything. And so as we're driving through there with this aligned equipment, this tells us in this particular map what the outdoor coverage would be. If it was a user driving around in a car and had his car radio, portables, a handheld radio, what his coverage would look like. For the most part, it's okay, but there is some significant loss. It's hard to tell, but down on the bottom right side, the southeast corner of the county, and generally along the southern side of the county, there are some struggles with the current radio system, even outdoors. On the opposite corner of that, the northwest side, there are some struggles with the existing system, even outdoors. And I'll tell you, if it's not great outdoors, it's only going to get worse as you step inside a doorway to somebody's house or a building, which you'll see here in the coming slides. Or if maybe that's in the presentation or the report I'm thinking, but there are other slides in the report that give each individual step of, okay, as I were to step into a home, a single story wood frame home, what would my coverage look like? If I went inside of a school, what would my coverage look like? If I went inside of a hospital, what would my coverage look like on the existing system? And that's part of the coverage maps that are provided, like I said, in that 293-page report. It tells you just an overview of what the current coverage is. What are findings you'll see here? The transmitters, the repeaters that we call them, the transmitters, receivers, the manufacturer that announced the end of life of that equipment in 2013 and actually ended maintenance on that in 2017. So any maintenance to be done on any of the equipment would have to be third party, either through your current maintenance vendor having spares of that equipment, or websites like eBay, whatever else it might be, where you can find third-party equipment. I'm not saying that's the only place you can find it, but it is not supported by the manufacturer anymore. The equipment is slowly degrading. Again, I mentioned that there have been times that we were told from the users that there have been outages, problems where there were significant times where the radio system was not operable. There was back in 2012, 2013 timeframe, there was a FCC mandate called narrowbanding, where every radio user in the frequency band that you use was required to essentially use less spectrum and had to make an update to their radios that the FCC again required to use less spectrum, and that was their effort to open more frequencies so they could sell more frequencies and get more users out there having radios. The bad side of that is that it affected coverage. Narrowbanding, just because of the physics of how it works, diminishes coverage, not only outdoors, but of course as you go indoors it gets significantly worse. And so when that occurred, now coverage for the radio users that may have been sufficient before was starting to find these dead areas within the county and the city where the radios could not work. Again, infrastructure issues, there are tower issues, shelters, problems that we found with coax resting in grass in some places, very simple maintenance things, but that affect the long-term operation of a radio system. And then of course interoperability issues, as I mentioned before, there's a significant difference of radio infrastructure between the states. So utilizing, trying to grab a radio and talk to a highway patrolman is not as easy right now because they use modern digital technology that the FCC and other agencies like APCO have solidified as the national public safety radio standards. And a lot of the equipment that's currently used within the county and the city is not compatible with that. So it makes communication between state agencies and or neighboring agencies incompatible with your equipment. And then, again, that's kind of touched on state agencies, neighboring counties, other people that use different radio equipment is what it touches on. So the last bits of this presentation include conceptual designs. I will try to, as quickly as I can go through this, but getting the appropriate information to commissioners. But again, this is a lot of information, so if you do have questions, please do not hesitate to stop me. I'm happy to answer any questions. As you'll see here, I'll give you a quick overview. The 5 designs, 2 of them cover your existing frequency band of UHF, should the commissioners and all the users choose to stay in their existing frequencies. But the final 3 allow a transition to what is called the 800 megahertz. 800 megahertz is what the state uses for their statewide highway patrol and other counties and cities that have joined the statewide system called K6. 800 megahertz is what McPherson County has just signed a contract to move towards, and other counties around you. Ellsworth County uses a significant portion of 800 megahertz. So there are users that are joining into that 800 megahertz spectrum. That doesn't preclude you from joining onto the state system. As you'll see here, option 4 provides a standalone system that you own, maintain, and control yourself, which I'm going to specifically touch on item 4 here in a little bit when we get there. But there's really some multiple choices that we have here. We try to provide you with as many possible options so that way you can make an informed decision for your county and city. So with that, I'll jump into this here. The very first one is a UHF conventional standalone system. What that means is you use your existing frequencies, and it's designed very similar to how the existing system is. You have one repeater, and you have one group of people talking on it. So you would have a fire repeater, and a law enforcement repeater, and an EMS repeater. Now, of course, people could turn to those channels and speak to each other on the radios, but it would effectively be a dedicated channel per user. Some of the pros of that is that there is cheaper cost with that, there's less infrastructure behind it, and it is similar to your current operation. Some of the drawbacks from that is that there is no redundancy in channel sharing, which we'll get to here in some of the future technologies. And it may require a multi-band radio, meaning if I want to, as a user, say I'm a firefighter, and I not only want to talk in my system, but I want to talk to troopers or a neighboring fire agency or some other agency, I may require a radio that is more expensive to be able to talk on both the 800 megahertz, as I referenced, and your existing radio system as well. So while the infrastructure may be less on the upfront, the long-term implications of purchasing radios may be more expensive. Again, the projector maybe doesn't show it very well, but what we have here, this is what the coverage would look like portable on the street, meaning just a user out in the field, anywhere in the county. We specifically designed these conceptual designs to have at a minimum 95% coverage within the county. So if you went and chopped the county into a bunch of little squares, 5% of them would be the minimum that it could be accepted to not have coverage. And so with this, I believe we reached outdoor coverage 99%, but just as we go along with this, understand that our standard is that 95% of the county at a minimum will be covered. So we would not consider it an acceptable solution if it was less than that. So all 5 of these meet that basic minimum. This one, again, outdoor, portable on the street, would have upwards of 99% coverage everywhere they go in the county. The next map you'll see here, this is what we call a 6 dB house, and what that means in layman's terms is that if you were to step into a standard single-story wood or metal framed house your standard house in the county, on average, you will lose what's called 6 decibels or 6 dB of signal strength from the tower sites. And so this allows you a good coverage map to show you if an officer, a firefighter, an EMT walked into a house anywhere in the county, would it work or would it not work? Again, conceptual design solution, but this is a map that you will look at and see there is a capability with the locations, tower site things that you have now, if designed appropriately, to give you coverage. In this case, this one reaches 95% of coverage walking into a house within the county. The last one that you'll see here, this is a portable 20 dB. Now, this is where we start to get into significant buildings. That means 20 decibels of signal have been lost from the tower site. This is, in layman's terms, equivalent to what we consider a hospital, a large school, a very thick walled building. In fact, a public safety building, stone, rebar, concrete, things like that. That's generally where you will see significant loss. This is a map to show you that with a projected design like this, you could significantly expand the large buildings within your county that you have reach into. Specifically, one of the ones we spoke to, I'm sorry, what's the name of the school that's on the southeast side, just outside of town that we... South, okay, yeah. And so that was, for the schools, that was a big point of note that they wanted to make, because in the current system, there's significant drawbacks to the radio coverage inside of there. So law enforcement officers, EMTs, firefighters try to go assist in there. There's essentially no radios once you step through the door. And so part of these conceptual design solutions are to cover your key buildings. And in fact, Mr. Pruitt, Ms. Stanball, they gave us a list of key buildings that we had to include as part of this to make sure that they were covered with any conceptual design. So there's, I believe, 20 or 30, maybe more buildings that we have. We have a list of them in the report that are all, it's the Phillips Lighting, it's the churches, it's all the schools, the numerous schools that are in the county, grain elevators, all of the significant buildings that are part of the Tony's Pizza Center, or I forget the name has changed, but the Vet Center is here as well. So that completes that first one. That is a very simple solution. It is operating similar to how you have right now. The next solution is slightly different, and what's called a trunking. The unique difference between trunking and conventional that you'll see if you look at the headers between the two, a trunking system allows a repurpose of a channel. So let's say normally on a conventional system I have 3 channels. I have law, fire, and EMS. That channel 1 is always law, channel 2 is always fire, and channel 3 is EMS, just as an example. I'm not saying it has to be that way. In a trunking system, it's a shared usage. Channel 1 can be handed off to be both fire, law, and EMS. It can be shared with any number of users. It doesn't always have to be a law channel. It doesn't always have to be a fire channel. It doesn't always have to be an EMS channel. So one of the big pros with a trunk system like this is that you become efficient with your frequencies. So now, if you have a channel go down, in the conventional system, if the law channel goes down, law is out of operation. They have to move somewhere else or use some other system. In a trunking system, if the channel 1 goes down, as soon as that law officer keys up, it automatically assigns him to another open channel. So one of the key technological aspects of a trunking system is like telephones. Telephones just pick the open line. Whether you have a group of lines going out, when you pick up and get dial tone, it's just picking whatever open line is there. So too does this work. In fact, the trunking term comes from the telephone company history. And so it's an efficient use of your spectrum, and it allows for maintenance issues. If there is some sort of an antenna that gets struck by lightning or a power outage on a specific channel, you can turn that channel off, and there's no effective loss to the users.